I will be talking about a single event, the most important event in Fujian's life. My talk is roughly divided into 3 portions. We'll talk about, of course, the background of the Battle of Fei River, and including the preparations done by both parties on this battle. Then the second part of my talk will be on the actual events of the battle itself, what happened, and in that we'll use quite a lot of maps. Hopefully this projector will not fail on us, because without this map it will be much more difficult to explain what happened. And the last part of the talk will be on some of the reasons and discussions on why the battle turned out the way it did. This is the situation of China in the 4th century AD. We have the purple portion, which is, I'm not sure you can see here. These are all the areas which is actually ruled by Fujian at the start of the battle. You can see he had conquered most of northern China, all the way up to the Sichuan area. And we have Eastern Jin, which is governed the southwestern part of China today. Of course, as Qin has explained, we now call this kingdom Former Qin, and this kingdom Eastern Jin. This is a convention that we use today to differentiate between other Qins and other Jins in Chinese history, but we'll use the term Qin and Jin interchangeably. You may like to know why are we spending so much time on this one particular battle. This battle is actually, first of all, very well known among Chinese speakers because of these idioms. Some of you may be forced to learn some of them in your Chinese books. 草木皆兵，风声鹤唳，铿铿锵锵，啷啷锵锵，头鞭断流。These are very, very famous Chinese idioms, and this is I think for most Chinese speakers, this is why you know about this battle. There are of course other reasons. This is the most significant military event in this period, and because Fujian was unsuccessful in conquering in Eastern Jin, the Chinese reunification was delayed by 206 years. That's actually a very long time. And China today, as we know, is a multi-ethnic country. Besides the large Han population, Han Chinese population, which takes up more than 90% of its population, we have significant minorities as well. So, Former Qin being a government set up by a Di minority, failure to conquer a Han-dominated southern government is always interesting. We can discuss this better in the context of China's history and nation building. Of course, this is also a single battle which decided the fate of a powerful state. Qin was not just defeated in this battle, it was eventually totally destroyed because of it. And we have, of course, a small army defeating a large army. Eastern Jin fielded approximately about 80,000 troops into this battle. The number of troops fielded by Former Qin, well, the history books tells us is about 800 to 900,000. So this is a very lopsided battle. And of course, we have South China defeating a large-scale determined invasion by North China. Usually, for Chinese history, states based in northern China tend to be stronger because of more population, because the people are tougher. So by and large, China is unified from the north to the south, not the other way around. So this is interesting. Yeah. Just now, I think Qin has already gone into the political situation in northern China before the battle, and of course the great policy debates in the Qin government pertaining to this invasion. I'll go a bit further into the situation in the south. Jin was actually a dynasty set up by the Sima family. For those who are interested in the history of 3 kingdoms, Sima family is the one who eventually reunified the whole of China into the Jin dynasty. However, the unification was very short-lived, somewhat about 30 years or so, and by AD 317, North China was completely lost to the invading non-ethnic tribes, and therefore the Eastern Jin government moved to Jian in southern China and established a new government. Jian is of course the modern city of Nanjing. This government was actually established with the support of the large Han aristocratic families. These people will play an important role in politics in China for the next 200 years. Who are they? They are usually top officials. They are also very large landowners. They have extensive farmland. Many peasants work under them. They are very rich and powerful. Oftentimes they have their own private armies. Their descendants, their family members dominate the government. Chinese government during this time the officials are not chosen by the imperial examination system. This system only came about much later. Most of the officials are appointed by recommendation. And usually, if you are the top official, you want to recommend someone for government, you will recommend your own son, your own nephew, your own cousin, and that's how things usually work as far as these families are concerned. So it's with the support of these families that the Sima managed to establish a new government in southern China. But this government was extremely unstable. Civil strife and rebellion were very frequent, and different powerful families took turn to control the government. In AD 372, the 9th Emperor Sima Yao began the reign. He is a very unimportant person, other than the fact that he is the Emperor of Eastern Jin. During this battle, you don't need to know much about him. He was eventually to die a very interesting death. He was strangled by his concubines. Never mind, for the purpose of this story, just know that he is more importantly, in AD 373, actually Sima Yao was quite young. He was barely a teenager when he became the emperor. In AD 373, Huan Wen, the strong man of the Huan family, which has dominated politics in Eastern Jin, finally died, and the power passed to the Xie family, and the very famous person Xie An becomes the prime minister. Xie An is a very, very well-known prime minister. I think he's probably equal to Wang Meng in his abilities. Some people compare him even to Zhuge Liang and so on. And he will be in the list of top 10 prime ministers of China, if there are books on Xie An. He was able to stabilize the country and promote economic stability. And more importantly, he was able to delicately balance the politics in Eastern Jin. For example, the Huan family, Huan Wen was the strong man. When he died, his younger brother Huan Chong, took over. Okay, but instead of killing him or sending him elsewhere, he was made in charge of the upper and middle Yangtze, and he was in charge of the defenses of the country in that part of the country. Of course, the Wang family, also a very, very powerful surname, was in charge of the eastern defenses based in Xuzhou in Pengcheng. And the Xie family was in charge of the rest of the defense of the country. So power was well distributed, everybody was happy, and the Eastern Jin government ushered in a period of stability. Very important in our story as well, in 377, the nephew of Xie An established the Beifu army. This is we can call it an elite military standing army. This consists of mostly from refugees from northern part of China. They have escaped to southern China because of the war there. They hate the ethnic groups in northern China. They were very ferocious. They were very well trained. They are essentially the standing army of the Eastern Jin government. Actually, it's more like a private army for the Xie family. So they were established partly to counter Qin power and partly to watch over the Huans. So this is the situation. In the meantime, things are very, very unstable on the border. There were numerous clashes, and over time, Qin made inroads into Jin. In 378, Qin attacked Xiangyang with 170,000 troops. Xiangyang is, of course, a very famous city in Chinese history. For those who follow 神雕侠侣, you will know Yang Guo fought at Xiangyang. It was, of course, a key city in Hubei province, and very strategic. Qin attacked Xiangyang, and the governor Zhu Xu surrendered after 1 year of siege, and Qin now faced Jin in Jingzhou. Jingzhou, this particular Jingzhou is actually Jiangling during the Three Kingdoms period. It's actually on the Yangtze itself. So the two armies now face each other in the middle part of the country. And in 379, Qin then took Pengcheng, Xuzhou. Xuzhou is also another very important strategic city in Chinese history. It was the capital of Xiangyu during the Zhuhan struggle. Xuzhou was fought over between Cao Cao, Liu Bei, Xu Shu, Tao Qian, Lu Bu during the Three Kingdoms period. And in the 20th century, Xuzhou was fought over by the Kuomintang, the Communists, and the Japanese. So very, very strategic city. It is still a hub of the Chinese high-speed railway today. So it's right in the middle of the Central Plains, a junction between three major provinces. Qin took Pengcheng and advanced within 100 kilometers of the south, Guangling, where it was repulsed by Xie An. And in 387, Jin he was just not sitting there waiting for the enemy to attack. Huan Chou, just now I mentioned him, he was in charge of the Middle Yangtze defenses. He took the offensive, he attacked Qin with 100,000 troops. Okay. He ultimately didn't get very far and was actually withdrew. He withdrew. But all these campaigns actually show that actually Eastern Jin is not pushed over, quite capable of very capable military action. In 387 July, the Qin Fujian decided to attack against the advisors of almost everyone in his court, against the advisors of his brother, his concubine, his monk, almost every single officials. But with the support of the Xian and the Xianbei officers, he decided to attack. He called for 1 in 10 household mobilization. That means every 10 households must contribute 1 young man. And he gathered a total of 270,000 cavalry and 600,000 infantry. Massive army. Okay. Sorry. This is the picture of some of the cavalry of that time. This one. Okay. This is full armor. You can see helmet, body armor, even the horse is armored. Okay. This is very expensive. It's known as cattle frag. This is very powerful. I think I wasn't able to find out whether both Qin and Jin have this kind of cavalry. I think both had such cavalry. So it was the foot soldiers are usually peasant soldiers. Okay, if you call him from the field. Fu Rong, his brother, was made commander-in-chief. He opposed the battle, of course, but he was quite fully committed to this once he was appointed. He was sent in advance guard 250,000 troops. He moved towards Shouyang. And Fu Jian himself, he was behind with the rest of his army at Henan province. And history records that Qin army spread in a long line 1,000 li from Chang'an. The troops were just arriving from various parts of the empire towards the front line. When the news spread to the Jin court, of course, they were very, very scared. Who won't be, right? 800,000 men coming towards you. Sima Yao did the only thing important in his career. He appointed Xie An as the viceroy. In charge. So he was actually sitting in the capital throughout the entire campaign. He didn't go to the front. Okay. He appointed Xiashi, his younger. Xiashi was the younger brother. He was appointed acting viceroy in the commander frontline forces. The nephew Xie An as the commander of the Beifu army. Huan Chou in charge of the Upper Yangtze defenses. And in the meantime, Xie An was touring the countryside, playing chess, taking it easy, while everybody was asking what's happening, and so on and so on. Actually, he was trying to calm the court down. And he was watching the situation very, very carefully in the front. He was not just fooling around. The Qin armies attacked moving in from 3 locations. We have the Eastern Army from here. Western Army, okay, this is a much bigger map, okay, a bigger sense. This I circled, this is Xuzhou, okay, so the Eastern Army coming from Xuzhou, moving towards Shouyang, okay. The Central Army moving in from Xie An, moving towards here, Xiangcheng, southern part of Zhengzhou province. Fu Rong came first, he moving towards Shouyang. And Fu Jian, when Fu Rong reached Shouyang, Fu Jian was still here. So all the forces are all coming in. And there were another 2 branches. We have the Xiangyang forces attacking towards Jingzhou in the Middle Yangtze. And we have the Sichuan army attacking down the river. In the meantime, this is Nanjing, and this is Yangzhou. These are the 2 objectives. Okay. Xie An very quickly realized that actually the main offensive was here, the central army. This is the most important. The rest are not very important. And he ordered 8,000 Jin naval forces to quickly go and reinforce Shouyang, and then he moved the entire 80,000 faithful army towards Shouyang as well. And this is the prelude to the Battle of Fei River. Okay. This particular map is commonly found in any history book on this battle. It basically shows the whole military situation. This is a Google map, which I googled early part of this year. As you can see, there have been some changes to the terrain of this. So in order to help us better understand it, I will have made some crude drawings to help us. The battle actually took place in the Shouyang Huainan region in the Anhui province. Okay, just look at the main features. This is the Fei River. Okay, Huaihe. Okay. When we talk about the divide between northern and southern China, we often say that the Yangtze, the Changjiang is actually the divide. Actually, this is a more accurate divide. Okay, between the economy of northern as well as southern China, and even the climate as well. This is the most important, the Fei River. Okay. This river has long since disappeared, so I added it. The Qin armies were to advance from here. This is Fei River. The battle is named after this particular river. It's long gone, it's been replaced by a reservoir, but this is its approximate course. Okay. This is the city of Shouyang. Okay, very strategic. Way station on the way. If you follow this modern highway, eventually you will reach Hefei. And if you follow that again, you will reach Nanjing. The distance between Shouyang and Nanjing is about 260 kilometers if you drive, somewhat similar to the distance between Singapore and Serangoon. Okay, slightly further than Malacca. Okay, so it's actually quite close. Yeah. And this is Shouyang. It's now called Shouyang. It's a very small city. This brown area is a mountainous region. It's quite hilly. It's known as the Bagong-shan. Okay, it is a scenic tourist area in China today. It is also the scene of Cao Mu Jie Bing. Okay, the idiom comes from this region. Okay, we have this small little city known as Xiashi. This is actually a river gorge. It's actually hills on both sides of the river. There's a fort on top. We have this battle, this Luo River, which has long since gone. Is also featured in the battle, and we have Qinggang. So this is actually the map of the area of the Battle of Feishui. So what happened? Let's move on to the story. The main Qin armies came down from here, commanded by Fu Rong. Right? He very quickly seized the city of Shouyang in 18 days. Quite fierce battle. He quickly seized the city of Shouyang. The Jin army is supposed to, this is the Jin, okay, in red is the Qin forces, in green is the Jin forces. Jin forces are actually coming in from here, from the eastern part. They are supposed to reinforce Shouyang, but they were too late. The city has already fallen. So the Jin navy forces actually went to Xiashi and put themselves in the fort there, and they were quickly surrounded by the Qin forces altogether. So Fu Rong managed to take Shouyang and surround Xiashi. So this is the situation at the start of the battle. Okay. So it was at this point that Fu Rong intercepted a letter from Jin forces in Xiashi fort, and they found out that they were actually short of supplies. And he quickly sent a letter to Fu Jian, who were at this point still in Henan province, way behind with the main bulk of his forces. And the letter basically said, we are doing well, these people are not as strong as I thought. We should take advantage of this and quickly strike. Fu Jian was very excited when he heard the news, and he quickly rushed with 8,000 cavalry to Shouyang. And according to the history books, the bulk of his army was still behind. He himself rushed with his cavalry to Shouyang. So the number of actual forces engaged at Shouyang probably about 150,000 to 270,000. Yeah. Of course, I think more will probably be arriving over time. So the book records wasn't very clear how many were there, but I think most historians stick to this figure, about 200 to 300,000 Qin forces at Shouyang. And Fu Jian then decided to send an envoy, an ex-Jin officer, to urge Xiashi to get him to surrender. This was actually a very bad move on his part. This ex-Jin officer is named Zhu Xi. He was actually the commander of Jingzhou earlier, and he was actually captured 1 or 2 years ago. Fu Jian spared him and made him a finance officer, and now he sent him as an envoy to Xiashi and to urge Xiashi to surrender. I'm not sure whether this is a really very good use of former officers from your enemy. Yeah? Basically, what Zhu Xi actually did, the moment he reached Xiashi, he told him two very important information. The Qin armies hasn't concentrated yet. This is a good opportunity. We should strike as soon as possible. So this is what Xiashi did. In a night attack across the river, how he crossed the river it was not stated. Whether he used boats, whether he used a pontoon bridge, whether he just waded across. How wide is this river? That wasn't stated either. Basically, he did a sudden attack on the Eastern army. In the meantime, and this Eastern army was totally destroyed. 15,000 were killed, the commander was captured, a lot of material was actually taken. So the first battle went to Qin forces. Yeah, it was a great victory. And when Fu Jian heard that news, he was devastated. His confidence became badly damaged, and he was quite affected by this defeat. After the battle, the Jin forces quickly advanced towards the Fei River, and then in the meantime they also sent a naval force trying to reinforce the Xiashi fort. So the two armies now face each other across the Fei River. Okay. I'm not entirely sure how wide is this particular front. I will probably estimate about 10 to 20 kilometers. Yeah, we're not exactly sure. It was not quite safe. Fu Jian was very intimidated by the Jin formations, and it was at this point that he thought that the nearby Bagong mountains were full of Jin troops. And he said, that's where we have the idiom 草木皆兵 from. Yeah. That's right. The two were facing each other over here. He thought that this whole mountain was full of Jin troops. Yeah. Probably that's actually indicated there's no Jin troops there, since the history book said he thought that they were there. So they were probably all facing each other across this Fei River. And then there was this very interesting exchange of letters. And there were some small initial clashes. Both sides tried to cross, and then there were small clashes. Basically, they were facing each other across the Fei River. And then Xie An sent a letter. He suggested that Qin forces should retreat from the river and allow Jin to cross, so that now that you have invaded my country and we're now facing each other across the river, that's not very good, right? I think we should have a proper battle. So why don't you retreat across, and then we can cross, and then both commanders can watch the armies fight in comfort. What do you think of this particular suggestion? I think most of the professionals, the Qin generals, were against the idea. Why should we move, right? Yeah. But Fu Jian and Fu Rong agreed. They said, well, not bad, but if they cross, we can attack lah. They thought that this is not a good idea, right? This is quite a good idea. While they were crossing halfway, we can just strike, and then we can win. So this is where the Jin army crossed the river. Okay. What happened when they were crossing? While they were crossing, the Qin army started to retreat backwards, but because the formations were so large, so complicated, only the front ranks heard the order to retreat, the back ranks didn't. So there was disorder and chaos. And Zhu Xi, the officer who earlier, he was a Qin officer, he has gone back. Then he started to make a lot of noise at the back of the army, saying that, oh, the Qin armies have been defeated, the Qin armies have been defeated. So once the news spread, the entire Qin army went into chaos. And at this point, the Jin forces crossed successfully and with the full force of the faithful army, struck the Qin formation. The result was just chaos. Fu Rong tried to regain order, but he was killed by Jin troops in the stampede. Fu Jian himself was wounded by arrow, and he retreated with 1,000 guards in desperation across the Fei River. That's all he brought with him. The rest of the army went into chaos. It was total slaughter. And according to history books, the trail of bodies from Fei River to Huai River was so many that the Fei River actually choked up. You can see from here the disastrous retreat. It just ran. The red army arrow shows the disastrous retreat.
So it's choked by bodies, not by the leg.
Yes, yeah, I think so. I mean, thousands of people. I don't know how wide this Fei River is, but basically, when in the chaos, in the stampede, in a confused situation, and your troops are untrained, and then their ranks are not entirely unified, this is what you get. Oh. Fu Jian's carriage, ceremonial dress, hundreds of thousands of horses or cattle, countless material were all captured. 70% of his, 80% of his army died from hunger, tiredness, and the cold. Fu Jian himself was starved when he reached north of Fei River. There was one old peasant who gave him some food. He declined, and he was quite apologetic about it. So this story was recorded. But the more interesting fact is, if the emperor himself required food from the peasants, what do you think about his army and his officers? Yeah, what kind of situation were they in? That was the end of the Central Formation. The Western Army and the Sichuan Army also retreated once they heard news of Fu Jian's defeat. And by the time Fu Jian got back to his homeland in Luoyuan, he can only gather 150,000 troops out of the original 800,000 which started out. I think this 150,000 probably a lot came from the Western as well as the Sichuan Army. There were some fighting on those two branches, but actually most of once they heard the news, oh, the Central Army was not doing well, I also retreated. Wu Rongcui, for example, and his Xianbei army retreated with 30,000 troops totally intact. Yeah, he was able to bring back all of them. Yeah, which is very bad news, right? It was the main army which suffered most of the disaster. What happened after the battle? Well, Wu Rongcui, he was very nice, he was a gentleman. He returned his 30,000 troops to Fu Jian. But later he found an excuse, he left Fu Jian and various ethnic and tribal nationalities which constitute the Qin Empire started to rebel all over. This is the map, you can see all the ethnic groups all coming up. By 385, Fu Jian was forced to evacuate Chang'an and he was killed that year. And then 2 years later, the Qin state was totally destroyed. The North broke into numerous warring states. We have later Qin, later Yan, and Western Yan. You see the Qiang, the Xianbei, they all took the opportunity to establish their own state. The opportunity that they have waited for so long has finally come. They can now restore their states back. North China itself went through many dynasty changes. Norway, South North Qin, North Zhou, Sui dynasty for the next 200 years. Basically, quite chaotic. Northern Wei was quite stable. I think for those who are interested in the history of Buddhism in China, Northern Wei was a big player in that. But generally speaking, North China basically broke up into total chaos. How about Jin? Xie An was still playing chess when the news came. His guest, he received a letter, he put it aside, his guest asked him, hey, how's the battle? And he basically said, the little ones have defeated the enemy. That's all he said. His guest was so excited to run around to spread the news. He himself went back to his house. When he was crossing the threshold, he broke his wooden clocks against the threshold. Yeah, he was so excited, but he didn't even notice. His shoe broke into half, he didn't even notice. He was not very calm. He looks calm, but he wasn't very calm. Jin managed to regain territory all the way back to the Yellow River, but his rising prestige led to suspicions by the emperor, and he was to die in 83-85 after being sacked. So he didn't last very long after the battle as well. Eastern Jin, well, it was a very unstable government before the battle. It remained unstable after that. It was eventually replaced by the Liu Song dynasty, followed by the Southern Qi, Liang, and the Chen dynasties. And basically, China was in disunity until AD 589, where Sui under Sui Wen finally reunified the whole of China. So this is the political outcome of the Battle of Feishui. Okay. So now I'll move on to the third part of my talk, the reasons for the outcome of the battle. I think we can actually, this is quite, I think if you look at this battle has been studied for many years by many historians. This is a very common reason. I think I call it the traditional reason, and it takes a very macro view. There are many ways to say it, but I'll try to summarize in two points. Political and ethnic disunity in Qin led to military disorganization at a critical moment, even though the army was vastly superior in numbers and enjoyed more resources. While political unity in Jin resulted in a disciplined and dedicated force under a unified command concentrated against the enemy. So in other words, basically, northern Qin was actually, even though it was a very large state, it can field 800,000 men, it is not very united, it was very unstable, it was heavily, totally centralized, and it just broke apart at the slightest opportunity. While Eastern Jin happened to be very stable under Xie An. It was very dedicated, and they was able to defeat the North. So in other words, the reasons given by Wang Meng as well as Fu Rong, they were right to advise Fu Jian not to invade in the first place. I think we can also, but of course this particular view basically says I think it's better don't invade. Let's be peaceful. There are other ways to look at this. For example, we can ask the question, should Fu Jian have invaded but prepare more? For this, we can look at two campaigns in history to give us some idea. In 279, Jin in North China decided to invade Wu in the south. This is the end of the Three Kingdoms period. The emperor of Jin at the time is Sima Yan. Okay, he basically he postponed his invasion at least twice based on advice from his officers, generals. He consulted everybody. Everybody gave him a lot of opinions. He listened to them. He postponed his invasion at least twice, and he waited until the Wu kingdom was under Sun Hao, which is a very corrupt, very cruel ruler, before he actually attacked. And he attacked with a total of 6 different directions. But basically, you can see Shouyang and Shouyang is the same. The angles of attack is more or less the same. Okay. The Sui invasion of Chen in 588 was another very successful invasion from the northern government to south. Again, Sui Wen consulted very widely with many of his generals and subordinates, and he waited until Chen dynasty the emperor was Chen Shubao. Even though he shared my surname, he is one of the most decadent emperors in Chinese history. So he attacked when Chen dynasty was weak, and he attacked from a total of 8 directions. It's the same battlefield. It's the same battlefield. This is Shouyang. The direction of attack is about the same, okay? But they were a lot more prepared. And you can compare with what Fu Jian did, right? Fu Jian went ahead in spite of advice from almost everyone in the court. And he did prepare. Well, he attacked only 8 years after Wang Meng died, so he did prepare, but actually you can ask whether he has prepared enough. There are, of course, other opinions. These are the more technical, what we call the military experts' opinions that I managed to dig up on what the Qin army should have done better in the battlefield. This opinion over here by Mao Zedong, who commented on this battle, he suggests there were over concentration at the center. And maybe Qin should have attacked in waves, 100,000 first per wave to advance if successful and to retreat when failed. Very Singaporean kind of attack. Huh? Yeah, if you work, you attack, you don't work, then you pull back. Huh? But this is Mao Zedong's way of war. And I think there's some sense that you have such a big overwhelming advantage. Yeah, people would say that Fu Rong's decision to seek Xiashi rather than advancing further was an unnecessary distraction. Fu Jian failed to bring up the main army after Shouyang, meaning that Qin was not as strong as the front it could have been. Remember, he just rushed all the way to the front. Once he received the letter, he left most of his army behind. So his advantage at the front is probably 3-1 rather than 10-1. His decision to rely on negotiation rather than to force a surrender was quite naive. And Xie An's decision to let him move first was good. He noted that there were two divisions, the two armies were separated. He defeated the Eastern Army first and then he go after the Central Army, concentrating your mass against the opponent's weak point. After the defeat of Fu Jian, Luoyuan Fu Jian was quite overcome by lack of confidence and he affected his morale and his army's morale. Usually if your boss morale is affected, the whole organization's morale get affected. I think many of you will have this experience. So how your leader feels is actually very, very important. But of course, there are some interesting aspects of the battle that we do not know about. The history books don't quite tell us. How many troops were actually engaged? 800,000 troops left the north. How many actually reached the battlefield? How many actually fought? We don't quite know. How did Zhu Xu, he was the one who caused the chaos, right? He said that our Qin army was defeated. How can one person cause it? Was it misinformation or was there some other factors there? The map, the terrain is full of rivers. They have to cross the Fei River, the Fei River, and so on and so forth. It was not mentioned that what role that these rivers played in the battle and the defeat, but I would tend to suggest that they will play a very important role. If they cross by pontoon bridge, ancient China history is full of they have been using pontoon bridges for thousands of years, so it's not unknown to them. The whole army needs to cross by a few bridges. There will be stampede, there will be chaos, there will be push. If they cross by boats or raft, even worse, right? And how did 70% of the army lost on the way back to Chang'an? Was it the loss of supply, total breakdown of the supply system that led to starvation and chaos? And in this, we can compare to some famous retreats in Chinese as well as world military history. We have, of course, Cao Cao's example. In Prelude, 800,000. He attacked with 800,000. He brought back maybe about 300,000. Yeah. And we have this huge disaster, Battle of Feishui, Shui Zhian. It took place in Korea. Sui attacked with 300,000, only 2,000 went back to China. Huge disaster over there. Yeah. Okay, some of these could have went back home without telling the central government. So, I think when we talk about an old army being destroyed, we must think of this in context. It usually means that they may have dropped their weapons, take off their uniform and just ran. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that all were actually killed or captured or wounded or what. But ultimately, as long as you lost the whole organization, you don't have the army anymore and you cannot get it back. Yeah. We have the Napoleon's retreat from Moscow. Only brought back 120,000 out of 600,000 that set off. And we have British retreat from Afghanistan. Only 200 guys came back from an army of 16,000. Afghanistan is a bad place to invade, let's put it this way. So of course some of these, the situation may be a bit different. Napoleon and Cao Cao of course managed to bring back most of his army. Cao Cao was quite relaxed, even though he was quite confident he was able to bring back his army. And in fact, Cao Cao's state survived for years after the Battle of Prelude, but Fu Jian's did not. So, and some of this could be due to weather conditions like winter, and some of this could be due to other factors such as harassment and so on and so forth. But basically, these are some of the battles that we can use to compare. Okay. What lessons can the Battle of Feishui teach us? I think each of us can draw our own conclusions. I will share with you this particular quotation from Sun Tzu's Art of War. I'll just read it. Is to your advantage, make a forward move. If not, stay where you are. Anger may in time be changed to gladness. Vexation may be succeeded by content. But a kingdom that has once been destroyed can never come back again into being, nor can the dead ever be brought back into life. Hence, the entitled ruler is heedful and a good general is full of caution. This is the way to keep a country at peace and an army intact. Okay, this is what Sun Tzu had to say. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. I'd like to thank you for your attention. Hope you enjoyed this part of the talk.